First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Valeri Chechelashvili for this very interesting presentation. He talked about this region, this trilateral cooperation, and he mainly underscored its importance for these three countries participating. But my presentation will focus on how this region, how this trilateral cooperation means for the world, for Europe, for Central Asia. So that's why the topic of my presentation called East-West Transport and Trade Corridor. Both Turkey, Georgia, and Azerbaijan is the main part, I would say, the backbone of this corridor. This corridor, the route, those are the countries that you can see on this direction. We had some traditional routes and some new routes that emerging. What is Europe-Asia Transportation Corridor? First of all, it connects two major macro-regions of the continent, Asia-Pacific and EU. So cooperation of these three countries, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey, has, as you can see, has importance in trade relations, trade turnover between EU and Asia-Pacific, which have trade flow of more than 2 trillion euro. Short or more favorable route for emerging economies of Central Asia to reach European markets. Now this corridor is important for its energy. It's the main source, one of the main sources of the European Union for its energy security. Through this corridor, through Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, EU gets access to energy sources of the Caspian Sea. But in future, it's not only, this corridor will not only important for energy security purposes, but also for many food security purposes as well, if this corridor will develop infrastructure-wise or financial sector-wise, that will ensure import of important food and other goods and services into EU and backwards. Let me see why this route is important. You might say that there are other routes existing, but why the private sector, the businesses, the traders must pay attention, must prioritize, must use this route. Because I'm an economist, I will give you some math hour. Northern route, first of all, the reason why this corridor is beneficial, because the northern route is length, it's longer than the Central Asian corridor. And you can see that it passes several countries. So if the route passes several countries, it increases its trade turnover, the volume. And the southern route via Turkey is again the longer one, and it's it has many cross-border points. But the Central Asian that's passing through Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey is the shortest one and is the most straightforward. As you can see, Azerbaijan government recently heavily invested in its infrastructure and building through the railways and other terms. Northern route only covers Asia, Russia, and EU. Southern route covers Asia, Iran, Turkey, and EU. But central route covers both Asia, Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Black Sea, and EU. That's it's important. Let's look at the advantages of Trans-Caucasus route. It's shorter in transit time, it's shorter in distance, it has lower risks because the countries on this, along this road, as the previous speaker mentioned, they had free trade agreements in between themselves. So Azerbaijan last year introduced green corridor for those passing this corridor. They don't need to customs of each agency, of each government to check their goods. By having the green plate, they can immediately, the truck drivers can immediately drive all these three countries without having a checkpoint, without being checked. Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline is one of the main energy security issue for this region because its total distance 1,786 kilometers. Its capacity about 50 million tons, but it also can be marked up to 80 million tons. And it mainly exports crude oil, and it exports it more easily and reliably than any other corridors existing. Another important route on this corridor is the railway, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway. It's been, there is no need to mention its importance for the trade because the railway, if there is no railway in any country, it's so premature to talk about the trade. This railway was for the transportation of cargo and passengers from Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia. And its capacity 5 million tons, but it could be increased by 10 million tons. Its distance is 826 kilometers, and it's the main railway between Central Asia and EU in shorter period. And this route is very important for China also, because China uses Suez Channel to carry by seaway its goods to Europe, and the destination only should be the EU. But using this route, the Chinese products may reach to different countries, to different destinations, not only EU, and in shorter distance. Advantage of Trans-Caucasus route, because its turnover capacity is 21 million tons, and in Aktau only, but in south, in Turkmenbashi, the main port has capacity 10.6 million tons. And if we look at the Baku, its turnover capacity 38.5 million tons. In Poti, it's 41 million tons. Let's look at the transit capacity of Azerbaijan. The oil terminal capacity of Azerbaijan, maximum turnover is 28.5 million tons. The vessels is 13,000. The capacity of reserve tanks is 760,000 cubic meters, and number of berths, there's 5 double-sided and 2 single-berths. And I should mention that the Azerbaijan government is investing heavily to expand this capacity. On right side, there's the dry cargo container terminal capacity given in tons. For comparison, I also gave the Georgian oil terminal capacity and dry cargo capacity. As you can see, the figures, this is also one of the biggest in this corridor. Let's look at the perspective and potentials of the route. First of all, it's rapidly growing trade flow between Europe and Asia, and redirection of significant transit volumes of liquid power gas and grain and bauxite, etc., to the route. New phases of increased production and transportation of crude oil from major fields in Central Asia. Let's look at the challenges and action. Lack of coordination between shipping companies, ports, terminals, and railways. This is one of the big challenges to address. Sometimes there is no action to compete alternative transportation routes. The private sector continue using alternative routes without being being informed about the advantages of this route. Sometimes not competitive, not transparent transportation terms and tariffs, and the government should meet on trilateral basis to bring more transparency, to bring more straightforward operations for this purpose. And also there is necessity to decrease transportation time and procedure sophistication. What Azerbaijan government did in order to tackle these challenges? First of all, we established by presidential decree, October 21, 2015, we established Coordination Council. And the main function of this Coordination Council to ensure the fastest delivery of the goods passing Azerbaijan and to increase the transit capacity of Azerbaijan. And we also take actions for promotion of this corridor and increasing its competitiveness. We are working on tariff regulations, because when you look at the international studies done by World Bank and IFC, we see that sometimes most effects for the choose of the corridor use, those are tariffs. That's why by not reducing the tariffs, it will not make this corridor attractive, even though this is the shortest one. Because you know that to use this corridor, the user should go to use the sea shipping, and then the railway, and then the trucks. So every time this loads and offloads takes time, and also the documents check might take time. So it would be useful for any transit carriages to get the one tariff for country. This tariff should accumulate both the sea cost and the railway cost and track cost. So the businessman should know how much you should spend for the country, not going down to all these three in one country per se. There is also necessity to decrease transportation time and procedure. In this area, we meet with some other state authorities and transportation companies. Let's look at the potential, trade potential of this corridor. This is nearly, almost between Central Asia and Europe, this is nearly 40 million tons, and this figure is forecasted to be over 56 million tons in 2020. Just for your information, that for the sanctions that have been lifted from Iran, you can see how the corridor might be overload because the goods and passenger flow from and into Iran, EU, will be intensified. Azerbaijan so far has attracted total 9.5 million transit cargo from these corridors in 2015, and we also intend to increase the volume of transit cargo by 2020 more than twofold. The annual trade turnover between Russia and Iran through the North-South corridor, mainly through the Caspian Sea, is 4 million tons, while this figure is 2.3 million tons between Iran and Black Sea countries only. Let's look at Azerbaijan's export dynamics. Azerbaijan is the 70th largest export economy in the world, the 180th most complex economy according to Economic Complexity Index. In 2014, Azerbaijan exported 25.7 billion US dollar and imported 13.9 billion US dollar, resulting in the positive trade balance of 11.8 billion US dollar. In 2014 only, Azerbaijan GDP was 75.2 billion US dollar for those who are not exposed to Azerbaijan economy that much. The current state of the FDI in Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan since independence was able to attract incredible amount of FDI, and this is the, you can see 2004 and 14 dynamics during these years, how much the total amount, how dynamic this flow was. And Azerbaijan also is the main investor. We also invest abroad in other countries. It's about, during only 2003 and 2016, Azerbaijan companies invested 30 billion US dollar abroad, mainly in neighboring countries. Those are the Turkey and Georgia and others. Turkey absorbing 83% of Azerbaijan outward FDI. This main investor is SOCAR, Azerbaijan state oil company, with investments in petrochemicals, energy and logistics, including the Trans-Anatolian gas pipeline TANAP. Having these opportunities and challenges, Azerbaijan government came up with strategic roadmap for its development by 2020. We call it strategic roadmaps by 2020, but one of the sectoral roadmaps is in trade area. Trade sector roadmap mainly focusing on to embark on a bolder, more systematic reform path to increase the competitiveness of the non-oil economy and non-oil and gas economy, non-oil and gas economy. This roadmap is adopted by the president of the country in 2016, which gives main focus on competitiveness of non-oil sector, especially on non-oil exports, and transitioning the country into knowledge-based economy and exploiting Azerbaijan's strategic position along international trade routes. You know that Azerbaijan not only the host of the East-West corridor, but also Azerbaijan the main crossroad of the North and South. Just recently with Indian fellow, I finished my article, you read it, you made it in my Facebook, on importance of this North and South corridor and its impact both to the East-West corridor and overall the trade export opportunities of Azerbaijan. A roadmap for logistics and trade sector in Azerbaijan gives a concrete target indicator by 20, long-term vision by 25, and long-term vision after 25. It has target indicators in quantitative, what we want to achieve in trade sector, with strategic goals and strategic targets. What we expect from this trade sector as a country by 2020, we think that by implementing these measures by 2020, it can impact to GDP by 650 million, and by employment 11,000, and investments in total about more than 10. This vision, trade logistics trade vision by 2020, we want to establish more regional logistics and trade crossroads in the long-term perspective, putting the free trade zone in new Baku Port complex into operation, and more trade zones, free trade zones ideas to overlook and increase the value in the transit trade, because we don't want to see Azerbaijan as a transit country, but we want all the goods coming in this free trade zone which will be very attractive for an investor, and get reprocessed and getting added value. Doing so, being the country of origin, Azerbaijan will increase its export potential. For strategic target of the roadmap, we want to turn Baku into regional trade zone, and as I said, to turn it to manufacturing center of the world, logistics center of the world. We also want to come up with mechanisms, impulsive mechanisms for implementation of this goal. First of all, for our target is private sector, investors. That's why our government is planning to arrange PPP with private sectors in bigger projects like shipbuilding or any other it could be. And right now, Azerbaijan has incentives to exporters. Any exporter exporting for the volume of the export, the government repays back this 3%. This is the incentive to increase the export of Azerbaijan. You know that Azerbaijan export is mostly 90% oil products. That's why we should do it. Another way we tackle this issue on software, we created a one-stop shop for exporters. We established it by presidential decree last year. The center I work, Center for Analysis of Economic Reforms and Communication, is operator of this AzExport.az. Any exporter can just go in and type his products. It immediately will interface with veterinary certificates, with sanitary certificates, with getting customs declaration, and everything will be handy for him just to ensure the government tackles this issue from one angle to make these exports to happen. Recently, by presidential decree, we established Digital Trade Hub. This Digital Trade Hub will not enable Azeri exporters to develop, but also will enable any investor in China or London not visiting Baku, but going this portal and signing contracts online, opening bank account in Baku. Doing so, we see Baku turning to be one of the important trade hub country in the world. Thank you for your attention.